There's a moment when you see the woman you're interested in talking to another man. You feel that pang in your chest, that knot in your throat, that feeling that you need to do something, anything, to capture her attention, to prove that you are better, more interesting, more valuable than him. Most men react immediately. They interrupt conversations, raise their voices, tell exaggerated anecdotes, brag about achievements, buy expensive drinks, send constant messages. They appear confident on the surface, but inside there's pure desperation, a visceral fear of being ignored. But it's exactly in that instant when they lose all power of attraction. Because every act of chasing, however subtle, communicates an unmistakable message. You are worth more than I am. I need your validation. And that message, once conveyed, is almost impossible to erase. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the one silent gesture that completely reverses this dynamic, making any woman you're interested in start pursuing you. I'll reveal the invisible mistake 97% of men make that makes them seem needy even when they're not. I'll show you the exact technique applied in 3 situations you'll face this week. And finally, I'll give you the complete system that turns this gesture into natural magnetism they won't be able to resist. The truth nobody dares to tell you: whoever chases devalues themselves. Whoever attracts dominates. If this has already made you think, hit like now and let's go. Think of a magnet as the perfect metaphor. Most believe that to attract something, you must move towards it, chase it, reach for it with your own hands. But a true magnet doesn't need to move an inch. Its power lies in its core, in its essence, and it's the other objects that can't help but be drawn to it, even against their will. And it's exactly that silent, invisible magnetism that we're going to build today, step by step. Let me explain exactly why this happens, and where most men lose the game without realizing it. The fundamental mistake almost everyone makes is confusing attention with attraction. They are completely opposite forces. Attention is easy to get. Raise your voice, tell a joke, buy a round of drinks, brag about an achievement, be the clown of the group. You'll get looks, laughs, maybe even phone numbers, but you won't get true desire. Attraction, on the other hand, operates under completely different psychological principles. It works like gravity. You don't see it, you don't feel it, but its force is constant and unstoppable. And gravity doesn't chase objects. Objects fall into it because it's a fundamental law of the universe. The average man sends constant messages. Good morning, beautiful. How was your day? What are you doing? He thinks he's showing interest, that he's building connection. Result: conversations that slowly die, dates canceled at the last minute, the devastating, I see you as a friend. The magnetic man, on the other hand, sends fewer messages, but each one has a purpose, precise timing, a strategic gap between them. Result: she anxiously awaiting the next communication, initiating conversations, looking for reasons to see you. This happens for a deep psychological reason that very few understand. Perceived value is directly linked to scarcity. Everything that is abundant, available, and easy to get automatically loses value in the human mind. It's not manipulation. It's how we're evolutionarily programmed. From childhood, we learned that what's hard to get is more valuable. What others want is more desirable. Scarcity generates obsession. Think of water and diamonds. Water is essential for life. You literally can't live without it. Diamonds are basically shiny rocks. Yet, which one has more perceived value? Diamonds, because they're scarce. Your attention works exactly the same way. When you give it away constantly, you're telling the world it has no value, that anyone can have it effortlessly. It's like an exclusive restaurant versus an all-you-can-eat buffet. Both offer food, but only one generates waiting lines and reservations months in advance. Not because the food is necessarily better, but because the experience is perceived as valuable, scarce, and worth the effort. Perhaps you've found yourself sending 3 messages for everyone she responds to. Or maybe you've noticed how your voice changes when you talk to a woman you're attracted to, becoming slightly higher-pitched, faster, more anxious to fill awkward silences. Or that feeling of needing to constantly impress her with increasingly elaborate stories. Or how you immediately react to her social media posts, always being the first to like or comment. Or even how you rearrange your plans when she suggests meeting, canceling previous commitments as if her time were inherently more valuable than yours. It's like a tennis match where you're always running back and forth across the court, exhausting yourself, while she barely needs to move. Every message, every like, every act of chasing is like a small transfer of power, almost imperceptible at the moment, but devastating in its cumulative effect. The contrast is clear. The average man believes that showing constant interest will create reciprocity. The magnetic man understands that interest is earned, not given away. What they least understand is the invisible cost, the internal damage this dynamic causes. It's not just that she loses interest. It's that you, slowly but inevitably, begin to see yourself as less valuable. Your subconscious registers your own actions and arrives at a devastating conclusion. If I'm chasing this much, I must be worth less. And so begins a destructive cycle where every act of chasing not only diminishes your external attractiveness, but also erodes your internal self-esteem. Whoever chases not only loses the external game of attraction, but also the internal battle for dignity. But identifying the problem is only the beginning. Now I'm going to show you exactly what to do, step by step. The silent gesture that completely reverses this dynamic in 3 situations you'll face this week. The core technique is called magnetic void, and it works precisely because it goes against everything you've been taught about attracting a woman. It's not about doing, but about stopping doing. It's not about adding, but about taking away. It's not about chasing, but about creating a space she feels an irresistible need to fill. It works like this. First, you establish a clear initial connection, a moment of undeniable chemistry where you both feel something. This is crucial because without that initial spark, there's nothing to feed. Then, instead of chasing that spark, you deliberately create a space, a void of your presence. You don't disappear completely. That would be childish. You simply visibly reduce your emotional investment. The third step is the most counterintuitive. When she starts to approach to fill that void, and she will, don't lunge forward. Maintain your center, your axis. Finally, you establish a pattern of proximity and distance that creates an emotional addiction to your presence. Most act with an energy of need, of hunger. You must act with an energy of abundance, of satisfaction. The difference is not subtle. It's an abyss you'll feel instantly. So this doesn't remain theoretical. Let's see how to apply it in real situations, starting with a social context. Imagine you're at a party or gathering. You see her from across the room. There's chemistry, glances that last a second longer than usual. Most men take this as a sign to approach immediately, start a conversation, and basically not leave her side for the rest of the night. They buy drinks, search for topics, try to impress, and end up following her like a satellite in orbit. You, on the other hand, notice that glance and respond with a slight smile, a small nod that confirms, yes, there's something here. You approach, start a brief but intense conversation, completely present, maintaining solid eye contact. And just as the conversation reaches a high point, you use the magnetic void. It was great meeting you. I'm going to say hi to some friends. Maybe we'll run into each other later. And you withdraw, without asking for her number, without looking for excuses to stay. You simply leave when the energy is at its peak, not when it starts to wane. What happens next? She watches you as you socialize with others, as you enjoy the night on your own. You're not acting. You're genuinely enjoying yourself. And a question arises in her mind. Why isn't he trying to impress me like everyone else? That question is the beginning of the chase. Because whoever controls curiosity controls attention. Whoever controls attention controls attraction. Now, let's take this to the digital context, where most make the most costly mistakes. You get her number or her Instagram. Most immediately begin the bombardment. Good mornings, good nights, comments on every story, likes on photos from years ago. They think they're showing interest. They're showing need. You, on the other hand, start with a unique, specific message related to something you personally shared, nothing generic. You establish a brief but interesting conversation, and when it's flowing well, you implement the digital magnetic void. I've got some things to sort out, talk soon. And you disappear for a specific period. Not 24 hours, not 3 days, just long enough for her to notice your absence, but not so long that she forgets your presence. When you return, you do so with renewed energy, without mentioning your absence, without apologizing for it. What happens in her mind during that gap is more powerful than any message you could send. In that void, she starts thinking about you, wondering why you're not like the others, formulating theories about you. And when contact returns, her emotional investment has increased without you having done anything but create space. In the realm of dating, the principle holds, but the application is more subtle. You've invited her out, the date is going well, there's laughter, casual touching. All the signs are positive. The average man tries to extend the night as much as possible, suggests going to a second place, then a third, resisting it ending because he fears it might be his only chance. You, on the other hand, end the date at its peak. When the energy is high, when you're both having a good time, you implement the in-person magnetic void. I had a great time with you. I have to get up early tomorrow, but let's definitely do this again. You walk her to her transport or her door, say goodbye appropriately, and withdraw, without insisting on the next date, without seeking immediate confirmation. What happens next is psychologically inevitable. She returns home with the sweet taste of what was, but also with a hunger for what could have been. And that combination is more powerful than any night that could have been extended until it became awkward or predictable. But pay attention, there are 3 common mistakes when applying this technique that can ruin the entire effect. The first mistake is confusing the magnetic void with simply disappearing or giving the famous silent treatment. This happens when, instead of creating a deliberate space after a positive connection, you simply become cold or distant without explanation. Result: she doesn't feel intrigued, she feels confused or even relieved not to have to deal with someone unstable. The correction is simple. The void should always come after a clear moment of connection, and it should feel like a naturally pause, not a punishment or manipulation. The second mistake is returning too intensely after the void. Many create the space correctly, but when they return, they do so with accumulated anxiety, bombarding with messages or attention as compensation for the time they were absent. This instantly destroys all the value created. To avoid it, always return with the same energy you left with, or even slightly more relaxed. The third mistake, the most subtle and dangerous, using the void from a place of insecurity or as a test. If you create distance to see if she looks for you, or check if she cares about you, you've lost before you've even started. She'll sense that insecurity, as if it were a scent. If you notice you're counting the hours until she texts you or constantly checking if she's seen your story, stop. Reconnect with your intrinsic worth first, then apply the technique from a place of genuine abundance. This works perfectly on a technical level, but there's a deeper, almost philosophical level that separates those who apply methods from those who truly embody natural magnetism. The counterintuitive revelation is this: the true power of the magnetic void is not in what it does to her, but in what it does to you. Most believe it's a technique to manipulate female interest. It is, in reality, a tool to recalibrate your own sense of worth. All of modern society is built on the premise that men should chase. Movies, songs, even well-intentioned advice from friends and family. Fight for her. Don't give up. Show her how much you want her. It's a narrative so deeply ingrained that we don't even question it. But when you look closer, you notice something strange. Men who follow this advice to the letter are precisely the ones who end up in the dreaded friend zone, turned into backup options, into shoulders to cry on while she dates others. This makes no sense according to the accepted narrative, and that's where most stop questioning. The truth is exactly the opposite. Authentic desire cannot be chased. It can only be inspired, and it's inspired through perceived value, not through insistence. When you truly understand this, you can never see attraction dynamics the same way again. It's like light and moths. Moths aren't attracted by someone chasing them with a flashlight. They're irresistibly drawn to a light source that simply exists, bright and secure in its own center. I'll tell you something personal. For years, I was the typical nice guy who did everything correctly. I was waiting for every message, available at any hour, canceling plans to see her, basically treating every woman I was interested in as if she were an invaluable treasure and I, a mere treasure hunter, fortunate to be in her presence. The result was a devastating series of "I like you as a friend," last-minute canceled dates, and women who mysteriously lost interest after a few weeks. A painfully consistent pattern that left me confused and resentful. Everything changed when, after a particularly painful friend zone, I decided to focus completely on my own development. Not as a strategy to attract women, but as a vital need to regain my dignity. For 3 months, I stopped chasing completely. I invested that time and energy in my business, in training, in reconnecting with friends and passions. And then something happened that contradicted everything I thought I knew. They started looking for me. Not just one, but several women who barely noticed me before now found reasons to start conversations, to show up where I was, to ask mutual friends about me. I hadn't dramatically changed my physique. I hadn't suddenly become rich. The only thing that changed was my relationship with my own worth. I stopped treating it as something that needed external validation to exist. This is not a coincidence. I've seen it replicated in hundreds of men who have applied these same principles. It's not magic, it's basic psychology. Scarcity creates value. Self-sufficiency creates intrigue. Mystery creates desire. You've already experienced this from the other side. Think of that person you couldn't get out of your mind, who obsessed you, who made you check your phone every 5 minutes. Was it the one who was constantly available, who relentlessly chased you? Or was it the one you could never fully predict, who maintained a certain air of mystery, who seemed to have a world of their own that you desperately wanted to access? Desire doesn't bloom in the soil of absolute certainty. It blooms in the garden of the possible, but not guaranteed. When you truly understand this, not just intellectually but viscerally, your behavior naturally changes. You no longer have to force the magnetic void as a technique. It becomes a natural expression of your self-worth. You don't disappear to create an effect. You simply have a life full enough not to always be available. You don't end the date at its peak as a strategy. You do it because you genuinely value your time and energy. And she feels it. The difference between someone applying a technique and someone embodying a principle is as clear as day to the female subconscious. Whoever masters this doesn't chase, they attract. They don't convince, they inspire. They don't beg for attention, they magnetize it. Now that you understand this, it's time to transform this knowledge into a practical system. I'm going to give you 3 concrete tools, a specific plan for the next 7 days, and the complete roadmap to make the magnetic void second nature. The first tool is called gradual investment. In essence, it's a system for calibrating exactly how much energy to invest in each interaction, ensuring you never give more than you receive. It works like an emotional thermostat. You use it specifically when you feel that impulse to chase, to do more to capture her attention, or when you notice an imbalance in the dynamic. It works like this in detail. First, objectively observe her current level of investment on a mental scale of 1 to 10. Then, adjust your own investment to always stay slightly below that level. Finally, increase your investment only when she has consistently demonstrated an increase in hers. For example, if she takes 30 minutes to reply to your messages, you wait at least that long. If she sends short messages, your replies are just as concise. If she shares something personal, you reciprocate with something of similar value. This precision creates a magnetic dance where she constantly feels the urge to take another step to reach you. The second tool is the variable presence pattern. Unlike simply disappearing, this is a calculated system for creating psychological addiction to your presence. It's based on the same principle that makes gambling so addictive: unpredictable reward. You apply it by alternating periods of total, focused, almost intense attention with periods of partial or total absence. The crucial part is irregularity. If she can predict your pattern, it loses its effect. One day you're completely available, present, the most attentive man in the world. The next, barely accessible. One week you reply immediately. The next, you take hours. This unpredictability creates a constant state of anticipation that literally releases dopamine in her brain every time you appear. The third tool, and perhaps the most powerful, is the selection framework. This completely transforms the traditional dynamic of courtship. Instead of presenting yourself as someone trying to impress or win her over, you subtly establish that you are the one evaluating whether she meets your standards. You implement it by asking questions that reveal your values and criteria, not arrogantly or artificially, but genuinely curious. What are you most passionate about right now? When was the last time you did something for the first time? What's the bravest thing you've done this year? Afterward, you react honestly to her answers, showing appreciation when something resonates with your values and neutral curiosity when it doesn't. This framework fundamentally changes the subconscious question in her mind from, "Does he like me?" to, "Am I good enough for him?" And that question is the beginning of the chase. Whoever selects is never selected. Whoever qualifies is never qualified. Now, let's integrate these tools into a precise plan for the next 7 days. For the first 2 days, your sole focus is gradual investment. Forget the other tools for now. Simply observe and calibrate your level of investment in each interaction with women you're interested in. Every time you feel the urge to send another message without a reply, to comment on that photo, to offer help without being asked, stop, breathe. Ask yourself, is she investing at the same level? If the answer is no, pull back, not as a game, but as an expression of self-respect. What you'll notice: initial discomfort, almost like withdrawal symptoms on the first day, a sense of calm and clarity on the second day. Women will react with curiosity, some even increasing their level of investment to compensate for your apparent withdrawal. Pay special attention to your internal state, how you feel when you're not chasing. That feeling is the first step towards freedom. On days 3 and 4, while maintaining gradual investment, you add the variable presence pattern. Now you're playing on 2 levels. When you interact with her, you not only calibrate your level of investment, but also consciously alternate between total and partial presence. The combination creates an intriguing dynamic that is impossible to ignore. Here the game visibly changes because you introduce an element of unpredictability that activates pleasure centers in the brain. You'll notice a change in your own emotional tranquility, an increase in the frequency with which they initiate contact, and primarily a reversal of the traditional chasing dynamic. If you feel anxiety about not being available, that's a sign you're on the right track. Adjust the intensity if necessary, but don't abandon the principle. Days 5, 6, and 7 are for refining and integrating the third tool, the selection framework. Now you operate with the complete system: messages or casual encounters, gradual investment, communication patterns, variable presence, meaningful conversations, selection framework. Specifically observe how the dynamic changes when you're no longer trying to impress but to evaluate. How conversations transform when you come from a place of abundance. How they react when they feel there are real consequences for not measuring up to you. Adjust your expression of the selection framework based on their responses. If she becomes defensive, you've been too direct. If she becomes more open and vulnerable, you're at the sweet spot. At this point, you'll already feel a concrete transformation in how you relate to women. It's not imagination, it's the measurable result of completely recalibrating the dynamic of value and chasing. And this is just the beginning. But maximum attention now, because there are 3 mistakes that can destroy everything you've built in that week. Mistakes I've seen even the most disciplined men make. Mistake number 1, overcompensation. It seems like discipline, but it's really disguised resentment. It happens especially after seeing initial positive results. You become too distant, too cold, almost punishing her for your past experiences. Immediate consequence: high-quality women distance themselves because they detect the underlying bitterness. Long-term consequence: you attract women with low self-esteem who tolerate cold treatment. The precise correction is to ensure you are creating space from a place of abundance, not vengeance. The second mistake is inconsistent application. You start strong, implement the tools for a few days, see results, and then you let your guard down. Your old chasing pattern returns. This is devastating because it creates an emotional roller coaster that eventually exhausts both of you. What seemed like mystery is revealed as simple insecurity. To correct it, commit to a minimum of 30 days of consistent application, without exception, until the new patterns become automatic. The third most destructive mistake: using these tools with a woman you genuinely care about while you continue to chase others. Your subconscious registers this inconsistency and sabotages your implementation. You appear strategic on the surface, but your energy reveals the truth. If you're genuinely interested in a specific woman, apply these principles universally, or don't apply them with her. Internal congruence is non-negotiable. The magnetic system is not a trick. It's a complete recalibration of how you relate to your own worth. So let's recap, not as a boring summary, but as the 4 pillars that now define how you move in the world of attraction. First pillar: constant chasing is an invisible transfer of power that diminishes your perceived value and slowly erodes your self-esteem until you become a backup option. Second pillar: the magnetic void reverses the traditional dynamic by deliberately creating space after moments of connection, generating curiosity, intrigue, and ultimately, pursuit. Third pillar: authentic desire cannot be chased or convinced. It can only be inspired through perceived value, strategic scarcity, and genuine self-sufficiency. Fourth pillar: the integration of gradual investment, variable presence, And the selection framework creates a complete system that transforms attraction from effort into natural magnetism. Strategic silence speaks louder than 1,000 desperate words. Now comes your challenge, and it starts in exactly 24 hours. Not tomorrow, not next week, precisely 24 hours from now. Within that period, an opportunity for interaction with a woman you're interested in will arise. It might be a message, a casual encounter, or a social situation, but it will arise. You'll know because you'll feel that familiar urge to chase, to do more, to fill the space. When that happens, I want you to apply the magnetic void in its purest form, not a diluted version, the complete version I showed you. You don't need to announce what you're doing. You don't need to explain it to anyone. Simply notice the opportunity to chase, recognize the impulse, and then consciously create space instead of filling it. Because when you do this, 3 things will happen. You'll feel an initial discomfort followed by a strange sense of quiet power. You'll notice a subtle but undeniable change in how she interacts with you afterward, and you'll viscerally understand that the control you thought you didn't have has always been in your hands. This is your trial by fire, your moment to prove to yourself, not to me, not to her, to yourself, that this isn't theory. It's practical reality that you can implement today. And after you do it, come back here and tell me specifically how the dynamic changed. I want to know the exact moment you noticed the shift in her behavior. And now the password. Comment exactly this, word for word. Silence attracts, chasing repels. This isn't just a comment, it's identification, it's code. It shows that you didn't just watch 28 minutes of video, but that you absorbed the essence. That you're not part of the majority who consume and forget. You're part of the magnetics, men who understand that true power isn't in chasing, but in attracting from your center. This is our password, our protocol. I'll read every comment, and I'll know exactly who understood and who simply skimmed the content. Comment now. And since you made it to the end, there's something I didn't mention today, deliberately. In the next video, I'll show you the invisible component of magnetism that very few men manage to master. It's about strategic emotional void, which connects directly with what we saw today, but from an angle that will completely transform your results. It involves the forgotten art of controlled vulnerability, and it explains why some men, without being extraordinarily attractive or rich, generate immediate obsession in almost any woman they meet. But that's a topic for the next video. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next video comes out in exactly 7 days. Remember the magnet I talked about at the beginning? Most believe they are simple objects with a single purpose. But in reality, magnets don't just attract, they also repel. Their power isn't in frantically moving. It's in staying perfectly still while the world responds to their invisible force. You no longer need to chase. You have awakened to your magnetic nature, and when you operate from your unmoving center, the world, and especially her, can't help but orbit around you. The man who chases begs. The man who attracts reigns. Now go and show who you really are.